You won't see this twist coming. Watch until the end to find out how the fate of the characters unfolds. When he walked out that door, he didn't slam it. He didn't shout, didn't even look back. That's what hurt the most. The quiet way he left, as if I was never worth a goodbye. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was thick, heavy, like a fog pressing down on my chest. I sat on the edge of the bed for what felt like hours, staring at the spot where his duffel bag used to be. Friends tried to reach out. Messages, missed calls, a knock or two on my apartment door. I ignored all of them. Words felt useless. Nothing anyone could say would undo the years we'd spent together, or the betrayal I felt when I realized he had emotionally checked out long before he physically left. Days blurred. I stopped eating full meals, stopped checking the time. I only knew morning from night by the way the shadows moved across my ceiling. But somewhere in that haze, one thought kept surfacing. I needed to breathe. I needed to go where I could be quiet without feeling broken. So I went to the only place I hadn't yet abandoned, the stables. My horse, Raven, stood there as if nothing had changed. Her calm, dark eyes met mine, and in that moment, I felt seen, not judged, not pitied, just understood. I wrapped my arms around her neck and let the tears fall without shame. There's something about animals. They don't ask questions, don't offer cliches. They don't look at you like you're fragile or broken. They just stand there, solid and alive, waiting. Raven became my anchor, my listener, my quiet place. I didn't know it then, but that silence, the one he left me in, was about to become the space where I would rebuild myself. Not out of rage, not out of revenge, but from a place deeper than pain, the part of me that remembered who I was before I loved him. Before you continue, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the channel. I've got another compelling story coming tomorrow that you definitely don't want to miss. This one's just the beginning. Stay tuned for more twists and turns, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you're the first to know when the next chapter is up. Thanks for being part of this journey. It started with short rides, just a few minutes at a time, circling the paddock, feeling the worn leather reins between my fingers. My legs ached, my back protested, but it was the kind of ache that reminded me I still had a body, that I was still here, breathing. The stables became my refuge. I started coming earlier, staying longer. Sometimes I just sat beside Raven, watching the way her ears flicked with the wind or how her breath formed tiny clouds in the morning air. There was a rhythm to it all. Feed, groom, ride, rest. A rhythm that asked nothing from me except presence. One morning, as I led Raven through the trails behind the property, I realized I hadn't thought about him in nearly an hour. That was new. For weeks, every thought circled back to him, his laugh, his lies, the way he said he loved me and made it sound like a promise. But out there, among the trees, I was just a girl on a horse. Nothing more, nothing less. That same morning, I saw someone new on the other side of the fence. He was adjusting the saddle on a tall chestnut gelding, his movements quiet and practiced. He didn't notice me at first, and I didn't try to be seen. But something about the way he moved, steady, unhurried, stayed with me. Later I learned his name was Daniel. He owned the property next door. He didn't talk much, and when he did, his voice had that calm, weathered tone you hear in people who've known both joy and loss. We nodded at each other a few times, shared the trail once or twice, and that was it. Still, when I saw him brushing down his horse with slow, deliberate strokes, I felt something shift in me. Not desire, not curiosity, just awareness. A reminder that not everyone leaves, that not everyone speaks in empty promises. I didn't trust that feeling yet, but for the first time in months, I didn't feel completely alone. It was a gray, restless afternoon. The clouds had sunk low, and the wind carried the scent of rain. I didn't plan to ride that day, but something pulled me back to the trails. Maybe habit, maybe instinct. Raven moved slowly beneath me, her hooves soft against the damp earth, as we followed a familiar path near the tree line that bordered Daniel's property. The air was still. Even the birds were quiet. I rounded a bend, just where the fence thins and visibility opens, and that's when I saw them. Daniel stood beside a woman. She was tall, graceful, with auburn hair tied back in a soft knot. She wasn't riding. She wasn't dressed for the stables. She was wearing a long beige coat and holding a paper coffee cup with both hands, as if it were something fragile. Daniel's hand rested gently on her back. They weren't speaking, just standing close, too close, in a silence that said more than words ever could. He didn't look like the reserved man I'd passed on the trails. He looked different, present, tender. My breath caught in my throat. I stopped Raven instinctively and backed us up behind the trees, out of sight. My heart was pounding, not out of jealousy. It was too early for that, but out of confusion, disappointment, and something older, something I thought I'd already buried. I stayed hidden, watching from a distance I wished didn't feel so familiar. And that's when the truth slipped into my mind, quiet but unmistakable. He was married. The woman leaned her head against his shoulder. He didn't flinch. I turned Raven around and left the trail. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just felt cold, like someone had stolen the warmth I'd been slowly gathering back. I wasn't in love with him, not yet. But I had trusted him in the quiet way we sometimes trust strangers who carry peace. And now that peace felt like a lie. I'll take a short pause. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and if you've ever gone through something similar. I'd love to read your stories. And if you'd like to hear more, don't forget to subscribe. I'm continuing now. The next few days passed in a kind of mechanical blur. I still went to the stables. I still brushed Raven down, saddled her, rode the trails. But something in me had gone quiet again, not like the numbness after the breakup, but colder, sharper. This time, I wasn't trying to recover. I was trying not to feel at all. I saw Daniel once during that week. He waved from across the paddock like nothing had changed. I nodded back, my face calm, my expression unreadable. I refused to show anything. I had no right, I reminded myself. No promises had been made. No lines had been crossed. But the disappointment still lived inside me like a splinter under the skin, invisible to others, impossible to ignore. I didn't speak about what I saw. Not to him, not to anyone. I wasn't ready to turn the moment into words. Words made things real, and I didn't want this to be real. Then one morning, I found something unusual. As I was cleaning out Raven's saddlebag, tucked between a folded cloth and a hoof pick, was a small envelope. No name on the outside, just soft paper, sealed carefully. My heart stuttered as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. The words weren't poetic, but they were raw, honest. You probably saw us. I wasn't hiding her. But I didn't tell you either. I've made mistakes, too many. I don't know how to talk about them without ruining everything good that's left. But I owe you more than silence. There was no signature, but I didn't need one. He knew, and worse, he knew I knew. I read the note twice, then tucked it back into the saddlebag. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. Instead, I stood in the middle of the stall, one hand resting on Raven's neck, and I felt something new forming beneath the surface. Resolve, not to chase answers, not to confront him, but to walk forward with my eyes wide open. The next time I saw Daniel, it was early evening. The sky was painted with soft streaks of gold and lavender, and the shadows from the barn stretched long across the ground. He stood by the gate, hands in his pockets, waiting. When our eyes met, he didn't smile. He looked like a man who had rehearsed 1,000 things to say and realized none of them would matter. I stopped a few steps away, Raven's reins in my hand. Neither of us spoke at first. The silence between us wasn't the same anymore. It wasn't peaceful or easy. It was dense with everything unspoken, everything he should have told me before I found out on my own. Finally, he said quietly, I wanted to explain. I still do. I shook my head slowly. You already did, in silence. That was enough. He looked away, jaw tight, regret softening his features. Maybe he wanted me to yell. Maybe he expected tears, but I had no energy left for grief that wasn't mine to carry. I had already mourned one man's betrayal. I wouldn't mourn another's silence. I wasn't looking for anything from you, I said, but I thought what we shared, however small, was real. It was, he whispered. It still is. No, I answered gently but firmly. It was. And that's enough. I turned before he could respond, walking back toward the barn, feeling Raven's steady breath beside me. The weight I had carried for so long, the ache of being left, the confusion of misplaced trust, it didn't disappear, but it shifted. It no longer defined me. In the days that followed, I applied to lease my own stable space on the far end of the property, away from the trails Daniel used. I repainted the old fence, replaced the water troughs, and renamed the stall. Raven's nameplate was changed, too, a quiet symbol of starting over. I never needed revenge. I never needed closure from him. What I needed was my own peace, and I had found it not in people, not in apologies, but in the silent bond between a girl and her horse, and the strength to ride forward alone without looking back.